If you can hear a rustling noise, that's my cat trying to get into a box that I was planning on throwing away that I can no longer throw away because he's claimed it as his own, so yeah. Anyway, I'm Adelaide and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I would really love if you would subscribe. It would mean a super lot to me. It really help me out. We talk about ADHD, autism and everything in between. We do vlogs, fun stuff, creative things, makeup, just all the stuff. And today we're going to talk a little bit about RSD. If you have RSD, you already know what it is. And if you don't have RSD or you think that you might have RSD, this video might be super helpful for you. I really hope that it will be. So what exactly is RSD? RSD stands for Rejection Sensitive Dysphoria. Rejection Sensitive Dysphoria is characterised as an emotional pain that somebody feels when they are experiencing rejection or perceived rejection. People with rejection sensitive dysphoria could often view good, exciting, positive interactions as neutral and view neutral interactions as negative, and then negative interactions are completely heightened and often unbearable for the person who is experiencing RSD. Rejection sensitive dysphoria and being rejection sensitive are completely different things, and I know that they may sound exactly the same and they technically are very similar. People with rejection sensitivity can feel extreme anxiety before an anticipated rejection. They can have trouble seeing neutral interactions as anything other than negative, and people with rejection sensitivity can often overreact to emotional situations with feelings such as anger, frustration and sadness being heightened. Whereas a person with rejection sensitive dysphoria feels all of that constantly, as well as an emotional pain that is often described as being completely unbearable and also really hard to live with and describe, because it does actually feel physically painful, and it can come in the form of extreme headaches and migraines. It can cause people to have diarrhea, it can cause sickness, it can actually make people really ill, because the stress levels that come along with having rejection sensitive dysphoria can cause physical symptoms as well. Like, RSD is honestly like the hardest thing and the hardest part of living with ADHD. I think quite a high percentage of people who have ADHD also have RSD, and it's something to do with the way that our brain is structured in dealing with emotions and having difficulty regulating our emotions. That's why it's also common with people who are autistic, but it's more common in ADHD than it is in autism. But you do not have to have either autism or ADHD to have RSD. RSD can affect anybody. Some really common symptoms or characteristics of RSD is feeling extreme emotional pain from rejection, whether that is real or perceived. Perceived rejection is the rejection that isn't actually real, and it's just something that you think is rejection. And this can be from constructive criticism to a project you've been working on. It can be neutral reactions to somebody that you feel should have been more excited or more happy to be around you. You then view that as rejection. Perceived rejection is really hard to deal with as well, because you don't actually know if somebody is rejecting you or if you are being rejected without having actual confirmation that they are not. So your brain just automatically assumes that it is rejection, and then you experience all of the symptoms of RSD. I made a post over on Instagram on different ways to help if you know someone who's struggling with RSD, like different messages that you can send them to reassure them. People with RSD do need quite a lot of reassurance. That's not to say that the other person is completely responsible for your RSD being triggered. That is not the case, and if your RSD is triggered, you do need to work on that yourself and be able to kind of open up and talk to people, tell them why you're triggered, and in a safe space and with someone that you trust, be able to communicate your feelings well with them. But it is not the responsibility of the other person to not trigger your RSD, if that makes sense. Because if they're not rejecting you and you are perceiving the rejection, that's not something that they have done. It's not something that the other person has control over, and it's something that you need to talk to them about. If you do know someone who has RSD or you yourself have RSD, it is really important that you have a really nice support network of people that you can talk to, that you can experience your emotions with, and they can work through them with you, and you are able to, in a non-judgmental space, talk through everything. It is so unbelievably helpful to actually try and speak to somebody about how you're feeling, even when you don't understand how you're feeling yourself. having the reassurance and having that outside perspective from somebody else can be super, super helpful. Some more traits of RSD are feeling very easily embarrassed and self-conscious, extreme low levels of self-esteem, and feeling very, very lost in your own sense of self and not really feeling worthy of love and affection, and feeling as though you constantly need to be doing more in order to be accepted. And that goes hand in hand with constant self-doubt, and this is also something that a lot of ADHD and autistic people can struggle with when we have difficulties with imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome can trigger our RSD, making it really difficult to know which part of our brain is triggered at the minute and what we are actually sort of dealing with, whether we're dealing with imposter syndrome, RSD, or whether they both kind of joined forces and just thought, you deserve to suffer with both right now immediately. People who are struggling with RSD or whose RSD has been triggered can also experience an intense outburst of emotions, but the emotions are often either intense outbursts of anger or completely bursting into tears, and it feels uncontrollable, like you physically cannot stop profusely sobbing. And that can obviously cause headaches and dehydration, which can then lead to other problems as well down the road. RSD people are often chronic people pleasers because of our absolute fear of rejection. And RSD is one of the things that I struggled with for such a long time, and was one of the main characteristics that I have of ADHD that was misdiagnosed as a personality disorder. And I was actually misdiagnosed with BPD or EUPD, which is borderline personality disorder or emotionally unstable personality disorder, because I would constantly have outbursts of anger, not be able to contain my emotions and not understand why I was feeling so upset, and being a chronic people pleaser, having outbursts of anger and sadness and feeling absolutely distraught and doing things to make it so that I didn't feel rejection from other people, which was misdiagnosed as EUPD and BPD because of the fear of abandonment, which is completely different. So a fear of abandonment and a fear of rejection are different, but it can be misdiagnosed and they can kind of cross over because the symptoms on the emotional side are very, very similar. Often people who are suffering with RSD can also have inward bouts of emotions. So instead of your anger and your sadness becoming outward in the form of anger outbursts and tears, it can become an inward thing, and you can experience really severe episodes of depression that feel sort of inescapable and as though they're never going to end. It can cause people to have struggles with self-harm and like engaging in risk-taking behaviours, which again is another reason people are often misdiagnosed with personality disorders when they have ADHD and autism or are struggling with RSD. The last symptom I'm going to mention is a fear of failure. So a lot of people, almost every single person with RSD, will struggle with a fear of failure, and this can not only really hinder the livelihood of the person because they tend to not take risks in terms of doing something that they may benefit from. They may avoid friendships, they become socially recluse, you cannot have any hobbies because of fear of failing and not being good enough. You can struggle with your schoolwork, your actual work, you can struggle with all of the things that can have a failure aspect to them because you feel like you need to be amazing at them immediately. Otherwise you are a failure and you'll be rejected. And it is really difficult to cope with. Having RSD has made it really hard for me to kind of maintain relationships and friendships with people because I'm so scared that they just hate me and they don't want to be around me and they think I'm a horrible, annoying person, and it's hard to not feel that, and then it's unfair of me to expect the other person to constantly reassure me that they love me, they like me, they want me around and things like that, because that's not their responsibility, that's my responsibility. And I am fortunate enough at the minute to have a group of friends that are so amazing and understanding, and almost all of my friends at the minute are either autistic or ADHD or both, and I find that having friends like that is so helpful because I now don't feel like as much of an outsider and I don't feel as rejected as I did when I was trying to maintain friendships with neurotypical people, because I feel a lot more understood and I feel like I'm able to actually try and explain and articulate the way that I'm feeling, and I don't feel as embarrassed to tell people how I'm feeling. If RSD is affecting you, your relationships, your work relationships, your romantic relationships, platonic relationships, or anything like that, please reach out to your friends and family and let them know that you're struggling, and let them know that you feel like you need a little bit of extra help when it comes to your RSD being triggered. You can, if it's safe to, let them know what your RSD triggers are, let them know what RSD is, send them some articles, send them some research things that people have done to let your family and friends know a little bit more about RSD and how they can help and how they can understand more of what it is that you're feeling, so that they know that you're not just overreacting to situations and your genuine feelings feel massive and feel real to you, therefore they are real. And it's really important that your friends and family understand that as well, because if you're having a big emotion, you are going to have a big reaction to that emotion. Whether the emotion is big to other people or not is completely irrelevant. I find for me, I like to write down the way that I'm feeling if I'm able to, or I'll sit and I'll film a video and I'll say to myself what's happened, what's going on, and how my emotions are feeling, and then I'll leave it for a few hours or a day or so. I'll come back and watch it, and I'm able to sort of look at the situation with a fresh pair of eyes and from a different, more clear-headed perspective. And I find that really, really helpful for myself, because I'm then able to realize that my emotions were heightened because of my RSD, and the situation isn't actually as big of a deal as I think that it is. Please remember that you are not a burden, you are not broken, and you deserve to be treated with love, kindness, and respect always. You are never too much for the right people, and just because you're experiencing big emotions doesn't mean that them emotions are too much, okay? You are not too much, I promise. I am genuinely so sorry to anybody who sits at home crying, feeling like they are too much because people aren't understanding where they're coming from, and feeling like they don't deserve love and respect because of the way that their brain works. That's not okay, and nobody deserves that, and you deserve to have a support network of people who understand, or at least try to understand you. And if you can't find that in your local area, there is a huge group and community online of people who will listen and who will understand, and you do deserve to be heard and to feel like a valued member of society. With all of that being said, I'm gonna now go through a couple of messages that you can send to somebody who is struggling with RSD, and why these messages can be really super helpful. The first message that you can send someone is if you've just hung out with them and you know that they're prone to RSD, you can just drop them a text and say, hey, I really loved hanging out with you today, it was so much fun, let's catch up again sometime. This is a very, very simple message to send to somebody who you know is struggling with RSD, and it can reassure that person that the interaction that they just had was a positive interaction. If they have RSD, they'll probably go away from that interaction feeling rejected and feeling like you didn't want to be there, and feeling as though that you were just there out of convenience and stuff like that. So to let them know that you enjoyed it and to do it again sometime can reassure the person that they are not being rejected. If you are having a negative experience with someone who has RSD and you're in the midst of a discussion or an argument, or you are giving them some feedback on something and you can see that they're a little bit upset, give them some time to process the way that they're feeling, and then just drop them a message, or if you're in person, say it to them in person, and just say to them, you know, I just wanted to drop you a message to let you know that I noticed that you was really upset, and I just want to reassure you that I do love and care about you regardless of our discussion and our argument. These are my feelings. Would you like to discuss the way that you're feeling so we can work through it together? Now, this isn't to say that you need to apologise or do anything to somebody who has RSD to make their reactions and stuff okay. If you've had an argument, or if they're in the wrong and they've hurt you and you're expressing your feelings, you do not need to apologise for that at all. But if you know the person has RSD and you do still want to have a friendship with this person, it is really beneficial for them to know your feelings, but to still also have that reassurance that this is an argument, I am mad at you, I am upset, you have hurt me, but I still love you, I still care about you, we will move past this, let's work through it in a way that's beneficial for both of us. A positive message you can send to someone at any point in the day is just wanted to drop you a message to let you know that I value you as a person and I really value our friendship. This is a message you can literally send to anybody, whether they've got RSD or not, and it's such a lovely message to receive, and especially if the person you are sending it to does have RSD and they are struggling with it at the minute, because you have no idea how it could be manifesting, and this one random message that they haven't asked for can make them feel so much better about themselves and really enhance their sense of self and their self-worth as well. That's not to say, again, it's not your responsibility to do that. It's just a nice thing that you can do in order to help someone who is struggling with RSD. If you work with someone who has RSD and you know that they've just had some feedback from a project they've been doing or some work they've done, and you see that they look a little bit down, you can drop them a message and say, "Hi, I noticed that you was a little bit down after some feedback. Would you like to talk about it and get my insight from it from an outside perspective, as well as some reassurance?" And this way you can then offer your personal experience and your personal opinion to the situation and how what they've done and what the feedback could actually mean, as opposed to it just being terrible. Because for people with RSD, if they receive critical feedback, even whether it's constructive or not, we don't see the constructive side. We just see that we're being criticised, we take it as rejection, we take it very personally, and it genuinely really hurts. And so to have an outside perspective and an outside point of view of, actually no, the thing is really good, it's just this bit that could be changed and then it would be amazing, or whatever the situation may be. And it's just nice to have the secondary opinion of somebody who you value and who can offer you the insight of the fact that it isn't rejection, it's just something completely different. That's not to say it's not going to make them feel a million times better, but it can just offer a little bit of reassurance, which is something RSD people just need, is the reassurance. The one thing that I think you should definitely text somebody or say to somebody if you know they have RSD is, how can I help when your RSD is triggered? Because this not only shows them that you care and that you want to help and understand, but it also shows that you know that everyone who suffers with RSD isn't the same. Triggers are not going to be the same, the reactions are not going to be the same, and everybody is an individual. What works for one person may not work for somebody else. And saying this to them, they'll be like, oh, well actually this is what helps. And you can then learn about what helps them and work on that together, so that person feels supported and feels like they're actually being heard. But yeah, that's all of the information and advice that I have right now. I hope that it was somewhat helpful and educational, and I hope that you was able to understand a little bit more about RSD and how it can affect people, whether they have ADHD, autism or neither. RSD can affect anybody, and remember, you are loved, you are valued, and you are worthy of respect and kindness, regardless of your disabilities and regardless of the way that you feel things. Things that feel big to you are big, okay? If something feels big to you, it's big, and you're allowed to have big emotions. With that being said, I hope everyone has a super good day. If you want to subscribe, I would super duper appreciate that. Give the video a thumbs up and comment below anything that you want me to discuss or talk about in the future, whether that's ADHD, autism, both, neither, or just comment something about your cat. I don't know. I hope everyone has a super good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.